Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about something I find amusing, and that's these personal trainers out there and coaches who talk about things like functional strength, who are afraid to actually have their clients max out. And the reason I say that and the reason that's funny is that when you think about it, look at a lot of the dangerous, silly stuff they have clients do in the name of functional strength, right? Well, this is supposed to help you in the real world. And they'll have them hopping around on one leg and doing things on Bosu balls and all this poor stability. These are things that are actually dangerous. You can actually get hurt doing. But they won't have them do 1 rep maxes, like true maxes. And tons of personal trainers are afraid of that. And what I would point out to people is that not only is 1 rep max training fairly safe, if done correctly and part of a regular structured program, if you really want to talk about functional strength, if you think about any real world scenario in which they are supposedly preparing people for, well, if you get knocked down or hit by something, or you have to push a big heavy object off yourself or pull it off someone, or you're attacking a fight and you need to exert force, or they'll talk about, hey, even for contact sports, right? If you're going to be in a contact sport, you need to be able to push somebody or pull somebody or hit somebody in an awkward situation. Well, isn't that what max effort work would do? Right? If you're going to actually go out and hit someone on a playing field or pull something off of somebody or lift something off someone in an emergency situation, the sort of stuff they talk about in these so-called functional fitness situations, max effort training is the best thing you could do. In fact, you should be maxing out on a dozen different exercises, exactly like we do in the whole conjugate method, right? Why? Because it teaches you how to strain against awkward loads. It teaches you how to find your groove, because watch even the different stuff I'm doing here, right? Doing box squats at different box heights, box squats with raw weight, box squats against bands, box squats against chains. These are different loads. These are loads that are shifting. And if you haven't done these in a while and you're rotating through them, every time you get under a maximum weight, you're having to ramp up to a max against a load that feels different than what you did last time. All right? You're always against an awkward, uncertain load. And you learn how to just safely lift against these things. Well, if we're learning how to safely lift against big, awkward loads and to lift maximum weights, and learning how to brace and prepare yourself for it, isn't that the whole functional strength thing that they're supposedly talking about? Isn't that exactly what they should be having people do? That would make a lot more sense than a lot of this stuff people do, because again, what is it they always mean by functional? Well, it's going to be against an uncertain load. It's going to be against an awkwardness. It's going to be against something awkward. But every time you change the range of motion or anything, let's look at these different squats and deadlifts, changing heights, doing them from deficits, doing them off blocks, going against bands, chains. This changes the load. It makes it feel awkward. You're going against something uncertain that's going to be different. Well, that's functional strength. That's the very functional strength they're talking about. So if you're going to have an object fall on you that you have to push off yourself, or pull something off of a child, like some hypothetical scenario they create in which a 400-pound log is fallen on top of a child in the woods and you have to pull it off of them. These silly scenarios. They're not even training you for that. Because if they trained you for that, they would train you how to deadlift at different heights. They would train you how to deadlift with different positions, train you how to deadlift against bands and chains and everything else. So it's an awkward, bizarre load that doesn't feel like your normal pull. And you'd be doing it for maximum force. And maximum means the heaviest weight you can handle. Right? That would prepare you for those sort of scenarios. Same thing, talk about tackling someone out on a playing field or having to wrestle someone to the ground or wrestle someone off of you, an attacker somewhere. Pushing and pulling against these different loads with different bars and ranges of motion and strength curves would actually prepare you for that. And then they'll say things like, well, it's not worth the risk. And I would say to any personal trainer out there who doesn't know how to safely program a client to lift maximum weight, well, why don't you just admit you don't know how to write a program? Okay. How do people get hurt on 1 rep maxes? Well, when they just have horrifically bad form and they don't learn how to brace and they flop around like an idiot. Stuff high school kids do, right? They ego lift. But not when you're tight and you brace and you do a lift correctly. Like what happened right there. I just missed over a 500-pound lift. I crawled right from out from under it, injury-free, and I went over and performed like 13 heavy work sets of supplemental lifts right after. Nothing strained, nothing pulled. I got stapled with 522 pounds right there. I didn't get hurt. I do it week in and week out. I hit maxes every single week on different lifts. I don't get hurt, and I'm in my 40s. My clients do, they don't get hurt. People who run this system don't get hurt very often. It's actually fairly rare. You know why? Because we know how to program. You know how to write a program, this is not an issue. If you know how to teach people how to brace, this is not an issue. And it's safe. This is the safest way to lift heavy. This is literally the safest way you could lift heavy, is to do 1 heavy rep and just keep adding weight till it gets too heavy. Because there's no fatigue, right? You are learning how to lift a heavy weight in a no fatigue environment. Now you do a heavy triple, now that's fatigue. You've created fatigue on the first 2 reps. You get loose. But when you're tight and you're prepared for a heavy load and you're thinking clearly, your injury risk is low. Now, you tend to see even in powerlifters that occasionally you'll see more injuries in competition, but why? Well, they're psyched up. A lot of times they've taken stimulants, ammonia salts, nose torque, all that stuff. Okay, maybe people who do large amounts of pre-workouts, they might get hurt easier. But when you just come in and you calmly maybe just get in your zone, you know, some psychological arousal, but not a huge amount, you're not going to hurt yourself. Injuries come from fatigue and overuse, not because you lifted a heavy weight. If you lifted a heavy weight that's within your capability, you shouldn't get hurt unless additional fatigue has been created. And if you want the proof, look at the lifts that I missed there. I am missing lifts with over 500 pounds. Because I'm doing them in a non-fatigue state, and because my training volume is appropriate, nothing gets pulled. I don't get any pulls, any injuries, any strains. And neither does anyone else who trains this way. It's pretty rare. Because they're braced and ready to lift a heavy weight, and you're lifting weights that are maybe just 5 pounds outside of your capacity at most. Right? Because you're ramping up and then you're jumping 10 or 20 pounds at the most, and wow, it's too heavy, you miss it, but you lifted the weight before it. So it's within a couple percent of your limitations, and you're doing it in a non-fatigue state without overuse or breakdown of form due to fatigue and loss of tightness due to fatigue. So if those things aren't present, people don't really get hurt. Well, those things are present when the trainer doesn't know how to program. Maybe it's time for a lot of trainers who are scared of 1 rep maxes to admit they just don't know how to train people. They don't know how to program. Because in all honesty, if you really wanted your people to be as strong as possible in some sort of functional fitness environment, they need to be able to lift maximally. In fact, it's the only way to develop maximum strength. Why wouldn't you? Now, in the way that I just described it, how it's done, guess what? It's safer than the car ride to the gym. Okay? What I just did with a squat, when I missed that 522 box squat there, when I missed it and got stapled, I didn't even strain anything. I didn't even have any real sore muscles afterwards. Okay? Driving to the gym in your car for your workout is actually a higher risk of injury than what I just did right there. All right? That's a higher risk of injury. I mean, if you were concerned with the injury risk of your clients, you would go to their home and train them and make them get a home gym. You wouldn't train them in a gym because that drive is dangerous. All right? Look how many thousands of people die in auto accidents every single year. All right? That's dangerous. Getting in a car. The people aren't afraid of that, but they're afraid to get under a heavy weight. Why? Now, people say, well, there's safety measures in place, with the car. You got seat belts and traffic laws, and, Yeah, well, we have safety measures in place too for maximum lifts. It's called put safeties on there. Learn how to brace. Learn how to breathe. Learn how to do these things. Teach your clients how to lift. Problem will resolve itself. Injury risk is extremely low. Again, these people just don't know how to train people. They don't know how to program. That's the problem. Alright guys, well that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.